Good evening, everyone. Today I'm going to be going over Module 3, the baseball flight with a friend in one of our company-owned airplanes, Aviation 430. Today I'm going to be using Diamond DA42 throughout the scenario because that's what I'm doing my training in. And for introductions, my name is Robert Hofer. Scenario overview is that a friend and I are planning a 200-mile VFR trip to go see a baseball game. Our boss from work had requested that we drop off a proposal at a branch office near the stadium. They're letting us use the company-owned twin engine. Like I said, I'm using a DA42 for today's example. Weather is forecast VFR for the entire trip. And the objective for us is to safely and effectively execute our VFR multi-engine cross-country flight. Today, I hope that we can learn about demonstrating effective pre-flight planning, risk management, applying our SRM techniques in cross-country flight, as well as our ADM models, analyze the weather and operational impacts, and demonstrate proficiency using performance charts and navigation logs. Essentially, we're going to go through kind of start to finish everything we want to talk about and consider for a flight like this. We don't have specific details regarding the flight, weather and everything, so I'll be talking in a more generalized more general setting. So for pre-flight planning, route selection, it's 200 nautical miles each way. Now, before we go, we're going to want to take a look at all of our weather. We have our MEDARs, TAFs, SNODOMs, winds aloft available. We want to review our sectional and VFR charts, make sure that we have an appropriate route plan. One thing that I really like to consider for multi-engine flight is just because we have two engines, it doesn't necessarily mean we can go as high as we want to, especially on heavy day or hot days with a heavy aircraft. Taking a friend along, probably take some extra fuel along. So depending on where we're leaving from and going to, that's one of my considerations in a multi-engine flight is if I do lose an engine, what is going to be my cruise down, my drift down altitude, and what sort of things do I need to consider as far as the route goes and fuel stops and where we'll be actually landing at and leaving from. So for the weather and environmental data, the MEDAR and TAFs, that's going to just determine our conditions of weather at departure and route and at the destination. Wind aloft will help us calculate our ground speed and our fuel burn as we go through our planning process. For the PIREPs, as well as NOTAMs, we want to check all of those, make sure that there's no TFRs along the way, make sure that there's no closed runways or any sort of airspace restrictions, especially because of baseball games going on. If we plan on using an airport that's going to be close to that stadium. As far as PIREPs, we want to just double check, make sure that there's not going to be any sort of known turbulence, icing, or any sort of obscurations or unexpected conditions along the route. For performance planning, this is one of the most important things that we have to consider when doing multi-engine flight planning. So we'll want to take a look at our takeoff and landing charts, calculate our weight and balance, determine our fuel burn and our time en route, and kind of assess the density, altitude, and runway lengths for the airports we're going to be visiting along the way. One thing that we will definitely want to consider in the multi-engine as well is our accelerate stop and our accelerate go distances. So take a look at those and understand if we're taking off and landing at new airports, making sure that we have the appropriate runway length to be able to abort our takeoff if necessary. I'm going to talk real quick about diversions and loss procedures, something that we always need to consider when we're going to an unfamiliar airport. So we'll want to kind of review the climb, communicate, confess, comply that we're all familiar with. Maintain chart and airspace awareness, and if your aircraft has it, automation in diversion scenarios can make your life a lot easier. Talk real quick on the MEL and airworthiness. So we'll definitely want to take a look at the MEL, make sure that the aircraft is fit with everything we need to conduct the flight. It's VFR day both ways. So few less restrictions as far as that goes, but definitely something we want to take a look at. We'll hit our Aviates acronym as well, make sure that the aircraft is airworthy, conduct a thorough pre-flight when we get out to the aircraft. Spots for risk along this flight that I look at, definitely weather and airspace. When we're traveling cross country, those are always two major considerations. I'm always considering other airports along the way where I can stop and get fuel if necessary, where services are available, and other places that we might want to land at. Human considerations such as fatigue and distractions. So we'll be definitely tired after a baseball game when we need to fly home. Definitely a little bit of stress if we're turning this into partially a work trip as well. Mechanically, I want to make sure that the aircraft doesn't have any sort of malfunctions, that the airplane's ready to go, and apply any sort of contingency management that we might want to consider. Talk real quick on the topic of SRM since we're going with a friend, but we are going to be single pilot. We want to make sure that we're managing any internal and external resources that we have available. So on board the DA42, we have a G1000. I bring my own Stratus along, but I also use ForeFlight on my iPad to help back myself up. It does have an autopilot system. The one plane that I've been flying most recently, though, the autopilot's in up. So definitely something to consider when going cross country. Maybe I switch to a different airplane that does have an autopilot and make my single pilot life a little bit easier. Utilize ATC flight service. Definitely gonna either file this flight plan VFR or pick up some flight file at IFR, maybe pick up some flight following along the way. Check out the weather briefings, make sure that any sort of automation that we have available to us that we're using it. And then also definitely want to apply our 5 Ps, which is important for the single pilot resource management. So as far as task and automation management, we want to prioritize navigation, communication, aircraft control. If there's anything we can delegate to our friend to help us with along the way, we'll make use of that. We'll use autopilot and GPS wisely, but primary focus is going to be maintaining situational awareness and avoiding any sort of complacency when it comes to the autopilot. As far as ADM goes, kind of hand in hand with the SRM as well. ADM, is our systematic approach to decision making. Main goals to reduce pilot error, enhance safety, influenced by perception, stress, and experience. Some of the models we use, PAVE model, we're all familiar with. We've been talking about that since private pilot license. So make sure that we're ready to go. From pilot, the I'm Safe acronym is really handy there. Make sure that the aircraft's ready to go, environmental considerations have been made, and that we're acknowledging any sort of external pressures. Also, the DECIDE acronym is helpful. Detect, estimate, choose, identify, do, and evaluate. We want to evaluate before, during, and after our flight. So for one more topic, just on situational awareness, want us to talk a little bit about CFIT. So we want to prevent CFIT through awareness and that means doing a thorough plan, having an aircraft that's aircraft routing that's appropriate for the type of airplane we're flying, using the GPS charts, terrain alerts, anything we have to verify altitude changes along the way. Once we're up in flight, we'll talk on cruise phase management a little bit. So we'll monitor our fuel systems. If we're taking some extra fuel along with us because it's a longer flight, make sure we're transferring that over nice and early. We'll follow our track via GPS. We'll use visual checkpoints along the way. Maintain any ATC updates. Make sure that we're just preparing early for descent, trying to stay one step ahead of the aircraft the entire way. On the approach and landing, we're just going to take a look at the airport data, elevation, pattern altitude, runway directions, consider crosswinds, DA42 as the max demonstrated crosswind of 20 knots, and perform our appropriate checks as we approach that airfield. For descent checklist, before landing, and then once we're on the ground and taxi clear the runway, we'll knock out our after landing checklist. As far as the post-flight and debrief goes, we'll just want to take a moment to review everything after we shut down the aircraft and have a chance to. So if there were any lessons learned, we want to talk about those, review flight decisions we made along the way, and update any sort of logbook report discrepancies. Biblical application for this, Proverbs chapter 3, 21 through 23. My son, do not let wisdom and understanding out of your sight. Preserve sound judgment and discretion. They will be life for you. So to me, that just means sound judgment, discretion in flight planning kind of reflect the wisdom that preserves life. There are my references. Appreciate everyone's time.